Somewhere in America right now, there are two people named David. The first David is 62 years old. He's sitting on a back porch he owns. Behind him is a house he bought at 29 for $110,000. That house is now worth $480,000. His mortgage has been paid off for 6 years. His retirement account has over $400,000 in it. He didn't come from money. He didn't get lucky. He just started when starting was possible. The second David is 31. He has a master's degree, a good job, and $41,000 in student loan debt. He rents a one-bedroom apartment. He has about $8,000 saved. He's been trying to figure out why, no matter how careful he is, the numbers never seem to add up. He's not asking for a yacht. He just wants to feel like he's actually moving forward. These two Davids are not from different planets. They're not from different work ethics. They're from different eras. And the difference between those eras, in cold, hard, mathematical terms, is what this video is about. Because here is the truth that nobody puts in a headline. The wealth gap between your generation and your parents' generation at the same age is not a gap in ambition. It is a gap in arithmetic. And once you see the actual numbers, side by side, clearly, the picture that emerges is not discouraging. It is clarifying. And clarity, it turns out, is the beginning of everything. So let us start at the beginning. Let us start with a single number. $30,000. In 1990, $30,000 was the American median. The U.S. Census Bureau recorded the median household income that year at $29,943. $30,000, essentially, right down the middle of the entire country. That was the number that defined the average working American life. And here is what that number could actually do. The average price of a new home in 1990 was $123,000. That means a median income household needed approximately 4 years of their total salary to buy a home. 4 times income. That ratio, the house-to-income ratio, is the single most important number in personal finance that most people have never heard of. Financial planners have recommended for decades that a home should cost no more than 3 to 5 times your annual income. In 1990, median America hit that target almost exactly. Now bring up today's numbers. The national median household income is approximately $74,000. The median home price, as of 2024 according to the National Association of Realtors, sits at around $425,000. Run that ratio again. That is 5.7 times income. Nationally. And that is the average. In Los Angeles, the ratio is over 13. In San Francisco, it brushes 17. In Austin, a city that was supposed to be the affordable escape valve, it crossed 9. The goalposts did not move a little. They were relocated entirely. But here is where the story gets more complicated and more interesting. Because $74,000 sounds like a lot more than $30,000. It sounds like progress. It sounds like things got better. And this is the illusion that trips an entire generation into self-doubt. So let us dissolve it completely. $30,000 in 1990, run through the Bureau of Labor Statistics inflation calculator, equals approximately $68,000 today. That is what that 1990 salary is worth in modern purchasing power. So the real income gain over 35 years, in terms of what your money can actually buy, is roughly $6,000. $6,000 of real progress across 3.5 decades. Meanwhile, home prices grew by 245% above inflation. 2 people running. One on flat ground. One on a hill that keeps getting steeper. From a distance, they look like they're doing the same thing. But they are not living the same experience. Not even close. This is the story of 2 Davids. And it is the story of millions of people who did everything right and still ended up wondering where they went wrong. Now, the house is just the most visible part. Housing is the headline. But beneath it, there is a deeper structure to this story, a series of costs that compounded against the younger generation before they ever earned their first paycheck. And to understand the full picture, you have to go back to the very moment the financial race begins. You have to go back to the starting line. In 1990, the average annual cost of a 4-year public university, tuition and fees, was $2,300 per year. According to the College Board, today that figure is $11,600. That is a 400% increase, stacked against a 20% increase in real wages. A student in 1990 could work a summer job earning around $4.25 an hour, the minimum wage at the time, and cover a meaningful portion of a semester's tuition. That was not a myth. That was arithmetic. Today, a student earning $15 an hour, the current floor in many states, working 40 hours a week all summer, can barely cover one semester at a public school. And this is before housing, food, books, or any cost of living. The result is a number that the Education Data Initiative puts at an average of $37,000 in student loan debt per graduate. $37,000. Carried across the bridge between school and adulthood. That is not a minor inconvenience. That is not a coffee habit. That is a structural entry fee to adult financial life that your parents' generation simply never paid. They started at zero. You started at negative $37,000. That single difference, that starting line displacement, has consequences that echo forward for decades. And to understand how far those echoes reach, you have to understand the engine that drives all of this. You have to understand compounding. There is a reason that compounding gets called the most powerful force in personal finance. The reason is not abstract. The reason is specific. The reason is this. In compounding, time is not a backdrop. Time is the fuel. And when your starting line is pushed back 5 years by debt you had to pay off before you could even begin, the cost of that delay is not 5 years of missed savings. The cost is the compounding that those 5 years of savings would have generated across your entire remaining lifetime. Here is the mathematics of that delay, rendered plainly. Person A, call her Maria, graduates at 22 with no student debt. She starts putting $300 a month into a diversified index fund. She earns a historical average return of 10% annually, consistent with the long-run performance of the S&P 500. By the time Maria is 30, she has been investing for 8 years. Her account holds approximately $52,000. Person B, call him James, graduates the same year with $37,000 in student loans. His minimum monthly payment is around $350. He is responsible. He pays aggressively. After 5 years, at age 27, he is debt-free. He begins investing the same $300 a month, the same fund, the same 10% return. By 30, he has been investing for 3 years. His account holds approximately $12,000. Same income, same discipline, same investment choice. $40,000 difference at age 30, before either of them has made a single financial mistake. Now extend that gap to retirement, and the number stops looking like a setback and starts looking like a sentence. Maria, investing consistently through retirement, ends up with approximately $1.2 million more than James at age 65. $1.2 million. From a 5-year difference at the start. Not from different incomes. Not from different intelligence. From a different starting position, one that was determined not by choice, but by which decade each of them happened to be born in. This is not a motivational metaphor. This is a spreadsheet. This is math. And the math tells a story that is much more complex than your parents worked harder or your generation spends too much on avocado toast. The math tells the story of a structural shift in the economy that moved the floor upward, the walls inward, and the ceiling higher, all at the same time. And yet, here is the turn in the story. Understanding the architecture of a problem is not the same as accepting defeat inside it. The people who thrive inside unfair systems are not the ones who pretend the unfairness doesn't exist. They are also not the ones who become so consumed by the unfairness that they stop moving. They are the ones who look at the board clearly, adjust their strategy to the actual game being played, and execute with more precision than the previous generation ever had to. That is the opportunity buried inside all of this data. And here is what that opportunity looks like in practice. The most important decision a person in their 20s or 30s can make right now is not which stock to buy or which city to move to. It is this: treat every month of delay as the literal cost that it is. Because we just saw the math. A 5-year delay at the start costs over $1 million at the end, which means that every single month you are not investing is not a neutral pause. It is a compounding loss, quietly accumulating in the background. This is not about pressure. This is about accuracy. Once you understand what delay actually costs, you stop thinking of investing as something you will get to eventually. It becomes urgent in the same way that a leak in a roof is urgent, not because it is dramatic, but because every day you wait, the damage compounds. Now, a question always comes up here. What about the debt? If someone has student loans at 4% interest, should they pay off debt before investing? And the answer requires a distinction that most personal finance content glosses over. High-interest debt, credit cards, personal loans above 8 or 9% should be eliminated aggressively before investing, because carrying that debt is mathematically equivalent to making a guaranteed negative return on your money. But lower-rate student debt, in the 4 to 6% range, does not have to be a reason to delay investing entirely. A diversified index fund, historically, outperforms that interest rate over time. The two can run in parallel. Debt repayment and wealth building are not always an either-or equation. The second piece of strategic clarity for this generation is this. The traditional path to wealth, buy a house, stay at one company for 30 years, collect a pension, was not a myth. It genuinely worked for the generation that used it. But the conditions that made it work have shifted enough that treating it as the only path is like using a map from 1990 to navigate a city that has been completely rebuilt. The new map looks different. It is built around assets, not just property. It includes index fund investing, skill-based income, and in some cases, digital or business assets that did not exist a generation ago. The equity you build in a broad market index fund over 20 years can replace, or at least complement, what the equity in a single home used to do for your parents. The landscape changed. The destination, financial independence, did not. And there is one specific tool on this new map that functions like a cheat code, and it is one of the most underused mechanisms in personal finance. It is the employer 401k match. If your employer matches contributions, say, 50 cents on every dollar up to 6% of your salary, and you are not contributing at least that 6%, you are receiving a guaranteed 50% return on those dollars before they touch a single investment. No market in the world offers a guaranteed 50% return. Not real estate, not cryptocurrency, not any individual stock. The match is free money, tied to time, and it compounds for decades. Using it fully is not a tip. It is a requirement. It is the floor, not the ceiling. The last thing this story asks of you is perhaps the most difficult, because it is not about numbers at all. It is about the reference point you are using to measure yourself. Two Davids. One at 62, one at 31. If the 31-year-old David spends his energy measuring his chapter 3 against the older David's chapter 20, he will spend those years feeling perpetually behind a finish line he was never supposed to have reached yet. The comparison is not just emotionally unhelpful. It is logically false. It is comparing different points on different journeys that began in different worlds. The comparison that actually serves him, and you, is a different one entirely. Where are you now versus where you were a year ago? Is the debt number smaller? Is the investment number larger? Do you understand how this system works better than you did 12 months ago? That trajectory, that rate of change, is the only meaningful scoreboard. Everything else is noise dressed up as context. The wealth gap between your generation and your parents is real. The math is real. The structural disadvantage is documented, measurable, and significant. But the response to a tilted board is not to walk away from the table. It is to understand the tilt so precisely that you know exactly where to place your pieces. The two Davids are separated by 30 years and a set of economic conditions that no one fully chose. But the younger David has something the older one never had at 31. He has the complete picture. He has the numbers. He has the map. And he has, if he chooses to use it, every tool he needs to build something that compound interest will finish for him, if he starts now. The story is not over. It is, in fact, just beginning to get interesting.